Mr. Chairman, first I'd like to remind my Democratic colleagues that the House acted last month to increase the debt ceiling by $1.5 trillion. They all voted against it. It's now up to the Senate whether to send that bill to the President or amend it and send it to conference. Mr. Chairman, perhaps we should enter that episode of Schoolhouse Rock into the committee record since they obviously missed it. Mr. Holtz-Egan, just some basic economics of overregulation. It seems to me that the prosperity in a free society is created by those voluntary exchanges that occur between countless consumers every minute. I pay you $1 for a cup of coffee. What's going on? I'm telling you that your cup of coffee is worth more to me than my dollar, and at the same time, you're telling me that my dollar is worth more to you than your cup of coffee. We make that exchange, and we end up with something of greater value than we took in. We both go away richer. Do I have that basically correct?
Yes.
Except
the price of the coffee.
Yeah, true. So suppose some busybody now sticks his nose into the transaction, the ranking member, perhaps. Oh, no, the coffee has to be served between 98 and 103 degrees, and it must be covered if consumed more than 25 feet from the point of sale, and a swizzle stick has to be included if condiments are to be sold at the same location. Doesn't every one of those regulations reduce the value of that exchange for one or the both of us?
Yes, and it'll most likely show up immediately in just higher costs for the coffee.
Right. And they tell us that this is to protect consumers, but isn't the word no the ultimate consumer protection? Of no, your price is too high. No, I don't like the color. No, I can get a better deal down the street. I mean, we all make bad decisions in our lives, but isn't that the price we pay for the freedom to make all of the good decisions in our lives?
Yes, plus the option to go somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly right. I can get it down the street.
I think one of the biggest impacts of regulation is to make it harder for new entrants to come in and compete, and that is where you lose competition in markets. That's where you lose the ability to harness markets to make people better off.
Right. I mean, it's not to say that some regulation isn't necessary. I mean, representations in a market have to be accurate, contracts have to be enforced, currency has to be reliable, products have to function as advertised. Those things that apply to the entire market and that make it trustworthy and reliable, make a market function more efficiently. But isn't that fundamentally different from government simply replacing a consumer's preferences with its own?
I think what you listed are a lot of safety and soundness regulations. People respect and want those. The excessive regulations are those which interfere and make decisions on behalf of people.
Mr. Cruz, let's turn to the fundamental constitutional issue involved in the regulatory state. You know, Madison pointed out that when all of the powers of government are concentrated in the same hands, you have tyranny. That's why they meticulously divided the powers of government. Congress makes law but can't enforce it. The president enforces law but cannot make it, at least he's not supposed to. And then you have an independent judiciary to resolve disputes. Doesn't the modern regulatory state put all of those powers back in the same hands? An unelected agency writes the laws, then enforces the law that it's written. If it accuses you of violating its law, you have to answer to the agency in a court that's run by the agency without a jury, and the agency then keeps the fines that assesses you. Is there a more profound threat to democracy than that?
Well, I think the administrative state has long been a threat. It's something that's grown. It's seen as a fourth branch. It consolidates all those powers that you mentioned. And there can be better ways of doing things.
And completely separates the government from the control of the people, which is the very definition of a democracy.
That's actually worsening because we talked about the relative handful of laws that Congress issues, and regulatory agencies are issuing thousands of rules every year on top of their guidance.
Here's how Alex de Tocqueville framed the subject of this hearing back in 1825, almost 200 years ago. He said, "It covers the surface of society with a network of small, complicated rules, minute and uniform, to which the most original minds and the most energetic characters cannot penetrate. The will of man is not shattered, but softened, bent, and guided. Men are seldom forced to act, but they are constantly restrained from acting. Such a power does not destroy, but it prevents existence. It does not tyrannize, but it compresses, enervates, extinguishes, and stupefies the people till each nation is reduced to nothing better than a flock of timid and industrious animals of which the government is a shepherd. Is that what we're facing as a society today?
It's too easily headed that way, and I think too many new sectors are subject to regulatory burdens. Even the example with coffee that you gave just shows you. If you have burdens put on that aren't necessary and you cut competition, you lessen commerce, you cause consumers to look for other options that then they have trouble finding them, it dampens the economy. It dampens the entire competitive structure, it dampens the GDP, and it ends up circling back into this budget debate you're having, because if you have an over-regulated economy and if you have spending that is also regulatory in nature, you're ending up with a government that's spending too much, going into too much debt.
Which helps.
If you lessen regulation, you can energize things so that you can deal with some of these.
Which helps explain why Mark Zandi is always wrong.